I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't grab framed photos or a toothbrush or even a jacket. I just stood in the doorway while Kendra leaned against the kitchen island like she'd been waiting her whole life to deliver this line. "You can sleep somewhere else tonight," she said, smiling like it was cute. "Go crash at your little brother's, or a motel. I don't care." Behind her, the house looked staged. Candles lit, countertops spotless. The kind of calm people curate when they've already decided you're not part of the picture anymore. I stared at her for a second, trying to connect the woman in front of me to the woman who used to hold my hand in public just to make a point. "What did I do?" I asked, because the human brain does that. It asks questions even when it already knows the answer is going to hurt. Kendra's eyes flicked to the living room where my laptop bag sat on the couch, unzipped. "You tell me," she said. "Maybe it's the lying. Maybe it's the way you've been busy all the time. Maybe it's the fact I'm tired of carrying a man who can't even keep his life together." I swallowed. My job had cut our department last month. I'd told her the truth the same day. I'd shown her the email, the severance packet, the calendar invite titled HR Exit Meeting that felt like a punch. She didn't cry for me. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked how long the severance would last. And then, very quietly, our marriage shifted into a transaction. Now she pushed off the counter, walked past me, and opened the front door. The porch light burned a pale circle on the driveway like a spotlight. "Don't make this dramatic," she said. "Take whatever you need, but not the car. That's in my name." I wanted to laugh, because nothing in this house was in her name until last year. Not the mortgage, not the insurance, not the utilities. But last year she'd made a financial plan for us. A plan that sounded so reasonable, so grown up, that I'd let her take over everything. She'd said it was temporary, just until we were stable. Then she started changing passwords. Then she started simplifying accounts. Then she started saying things like, "It's easier if you don't worry about it." Now she stood there with the door open, waiting. And I realized something ugly and clarifying. She wasn't kicking me out because she was angry. She was kicking me out because she was done needing me. I walked to the coat rack. My hands moved like they belonged to someone else. I grabbed my keys out of habit and then remembered they were mostly decorative now. Kendra watched me, arms folded. "You don't have to sulk," she said. "You can come back when you figure yourself out." Figure yourself out, like I was a broken appliance she'd put on the curb until she decided whether to repair or replace. I stepped outside. Behind me, the lock clicked. It wasn't loud, just final. The night air hit my face. It was colder than I expected. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification from a job board I'd been refreshing like a prayer. No new matches. I stood at the edge of the driveway looking at my own house like a stranger. Then I did the only thing that didn't require permission. I walked. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just moved because standing still felt like surrender. Streetlights blurred. Yards with holiday decorations looked like little advertisements for families I didn't belong to. By the time I reached the gas station at the main road, my feet hurt and my anger had settled into something quieter. A decision. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. A kid behind the counter scrolled his phone. A rack of candy bars promised comfort in exchange for loose change. I pulled out my wallet and opened it like it might contain an answer. There were 2 cards. One was my everyday debit card. The other was a thin black card I hadn't touched in years. It was my mother's. Not literally hers anymore. Not in the legal sense. But it still had her name embossed on it. And that name still made my chest tighten the way it had the day they told me she was gone. Evelyn Hart. My mother had been the kind of woman who ran her life like a clean spreadsheet. Bills paid early, envelopes labeled, copies filed, backup copies filed again. When she got sick, she called me into her little home office and said, "I need you to listen to me, Daniel. Not just hear me. Listen." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a single page, printed cleanly, with bullet points like she was preparing me for a meeting. She'd pointed to a line that said, "Emergency access." "This card," she'd said, "is not a toy. It is not free money. It is a door. If you ever need to open it, you will know. I'd tried to hand it back. I didn't want it. I didn't want the responsibility, the grief, the reminder. She'd held my wrist gently. "You're a good man," she'd said. "Sometimes good men get cornered by people who aren't." I hadn't understood then. But standing in that gas station with my life suddenly outside of my control, I understood. I picked up a bottle of water and a cheap sandwich, set them on the counter. The kid didn't look up. $6.89, he mumbled. I slid my debit card first. Declined. I blinked. Tried again. Declined. My pulse tapped in my throat. I checked the banking app. Logged out. I typed the password I'd used for years. Incorrect. That's when the panic came. Not the loud kind. The cold, sinking kind. Because it wasn't just that Kendra had kicked me out. She'd cut me off. I could hear her voice in my head from 100 little moments. "It's easier if I handle it. Don't worry about it. You'll only stress yourself out." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. The kid finally looked at me annoyed. "You buying that or not?" My fingers moved on their own. I slid the black card across the counter. For a second, nothing happened. Then the machine beeped, approved. The kid bagged my sandwich, still not caring. But I stood there like I'd just heard a door open somewhere far away. I walked outside, sat on the curb, and took a bite. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then the screen flashed something I hadn't seen in a long time. A bank name. The bank my mother used. My throat tightened. I answered. "Hello?" There was a pause, a breath. "Mr. Hart?" a woman said, crisp and professional. "This is Marisol Hayes with Sterling and Rowe Private. I'm calling regarding a transaction on an account ending in 1047. I swallowed. "Yes, that was me." Another pause. The kind that means someone is looking at something complicated. "Mr. Hart," she said carefully, "are you currently in possession of the primary account holder's access card?" "My mother's?" I asked, and my voice cracked on the word. "Yes." "She's deceased," I said. "I'm aware," Marisol replied. "I'm sorry for your loss, but for compliance reasons I need to confirm. Are you Daniel Hart, successor beneficiary on the Evelyn Hart Contingency Trust?" My stomach flipped. I hadn't thought about that trust in years. Not since the funeral, when all the paperwork felt like noise. Yes, I said slowly. "I think so." "Mr. Hart," she said, and the tone shifted. Less customer service, more urgency. "We have a security protocol tied to that card. Its use triggers an automatic review. I need to ask you a few questions, and I need you to answer honestly." I sat up straighter. "Okay. Do you have access to your personal banking accounts currently?" I hesitated. "No. My wife handles most of it." Silence. "Then, do you suspect any unauthorized changes to your financial access in the last 48 hours? My mind flashed to the declined card, the incorrect password, the locked door. "Yes," I said. Marisol exhaled like she'd expected that. "Mr. Hart," she said, "I need you to know something. While reviewing your beneficiary profile, we cross-referenced identification documents linked to your social security number. There are discrepancies." My mouth went dry. "What kind of discrepancies?" "Multiple credit instruments," she said, "opened in your name over the last 12 months, with billing addresses redirected to a private mailbox service." My hands clenched around the plastic bag. "That's not me," I said. "I understand," she replied. "That is why I'm calling you directly. We also saw an attempted wire transfer request submitted this afternoon through an online portal linked to your identity." I stared at the street. A car passed. Headlights swept over me. For a second, I felt invisible. "Submitted by who?" I asked, already knowing the answer I didn't want. Marisol paused. "The login credentials used match a device that has previously accessed the account from a residential IP address registered to..." She cleared her throat. To your home address. My home. Kendra. The cold sinking feeling became something sharper, like a blade finding bone. I didn't authorize anything, I said, and my voice came out hard. I didn't even know it existed. I believe you, Marisol said, but this needs to be handled immediately. We have frozen all activity linked to your beneficiary profile as a precaution. That includes any joint accounts Sterling and Rowe can trace through our network. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said carefully, if your wife has funds moving through any channels we can legally pause, those channels have been paused. I gripped the bag so tight the plastic crinkled. A thrill of satisfaction tried to rise. I shoved it down, because the bigger feeling was terror. How bad is it? I whispered. Marisol's voice softened. Mr. Hart, I need you to come into a branch tomorrow morning with identification. We will assign you a fraud specialist. And... She paused. We may need to involve law enforcement. I pictured Kendra inside the house, scrolling calmly, thinking she'd won. I pictured her smirk when she said, "Figure yourself out." My chest tightened. Okay, I said. I'll be there. Marisol gave me an address and an appointment time. Before she hung up, she added one more thing. Mr. Hart? Yes. If you feel unsafe returning to your residence tonight, she said, do not. This may escalate quickly once the freeze registers. People who commit fraud often react unpredictably when their access is cut off. My skin prickled. Thank you, I said, and the call ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the black card in my hand. It wasn't money. My mother had been right. It was a door. And the second I opened it, everything behind me started moving. I slept in a motel that smelled like old carpet and bleach. I didn't sleep well. Every time I drifted off, I heard the sound of my front door locking. In the morning, my phone lit up with messages. First from Kendra. Where are you? Then 2 minutes later, my cards aren't working. Then, Daniel, what did you do? Then, as if she was trying on different masks. This isn't funny. Call me. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. I didn't answer, because for once I wasn't going to react on her timeline. I showered, put on the cleanest clothes I had in my duffel bag, and drove the motel's ancient car share down to Sterling and Rowe. The building looked like a place where people whispered in expensive suits. Inside, the air smelled like polished wood and money that never worried about rent. A receptionist smiled and asked my name. When I told her, her expression changed just slightly, like my name carried a flag. She picked up a phone, spoke quietly. A minute later, Marisol appeared. She was younger than I expected. Sharp eyes, calm face. She shook my hand. Mr. Hart, she said, thank you for coming quickly. She led me down a hallway to a small office. A man with silver hair stood when we entered. This is Grant Miller, Marisol said. Senior fraud investigator. Grant nodded. Daniel. He gestured to a chair. I sat, feeling like I'd walked into court without a lawyer. Grant slid a folder across the table. When I opened it, my stomach turned. There were pages of statements, cards I'd never applied for, balances I'd never spent. One page had a copy of an ID scan, my name, my birthday, my photo. But the address was wrong, and the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. Grant watched my face. Identity theft, he said. Classic. But what makes this unusual is the pattern. What pattern? I asked, voice tight. Grant leaned forward. The person who did this, he said, wasn't trying to disappear. They were building a house of mirrors, opening credit under your name, moving funds, paying some down with money from somewhere else, then using the good credit to open more. I felt nauseous. Why? I asked. Grant's eyes held mine. Control, access, leverage. I thought of Kendra taking over our finances, her calm confidence, her insistence that I didn't need to look. Can you see who did it? I asked. Marisol placed another page in front of me. An IP address log, device IDs, locations, all clustered around one place. My home. Grant's voice stayed steady. "We can't accuse without due process," he said, "but we can act to protect you, and we already have." "By freezing everything," I said. Grant nodded. "Sterling and Rowe is connected to multiple clearing systems," he said. "When our protocol triggers, we flag linked identities. That means any accounts your identity touches are frozen pending review." I swallowed. "So Kendra can't access?" "Not through the systems we can freeze," Marisol said, "which is most standard channels: debit, credit, online transfers, certain brokerage movements." I pictured her at the grocery store, card declined, face tightening in confusion. A part of me wanted to savor it. Instead, my hands shook. "What do I do?" I asked. Grant flipped to another page. "This," he said, "is a power of attorney document your mother filed years ago. Contingent. It activates if you are in a situation involving financial coercion." I stared. My mother's handwriting on the margins, little notes, dates. She'd planned for a day I didn't even know to fear. Grant continued. "Your mother wasn't just organized," he said. "She was careful. She set up a private trust with conditions. You are the successor. The moment that card was used after her passing, the system did exactly what it was designed to do: find threats around you." My throat burned. I blinked fast. I hadn't cried for months, not properly, not with everything in my chest. Now it pressed up behind my eyes. "She knew," I whispered. "She thought someone would—" Marisol's voice softened. "She didn't know who. She knew life." Grant slid one final form toward me. "Today," he said, "you can regain control over your financial identity. We'll set you up with secure access, lock your credit, and begin the legal process to dispute fraudulent accounts. We'll also generate a report you can take to law enforcement." My jaw tightened. "And my house?" Grant paused. "That's separate," he said. "But if your wife has been manipulating funds tied to the mortgage, and if your name is on the loan—" He held my gaze. "There are options." Options. A word I hadn't felt in months. I signed forms with hands that finally steadied. By the time I left the office, I had a new account, a secure login, and a folder of documents that felt like armor. Outside, my phone buzzed again. Kendra. This time she didn't bother with politeness. "What did you do?" "I'm locked out of everything." Then, the mortgage payment bounced. Then, the message that made my stomach drop. "If you don't fix this today, I swear I'll ruin you." I stopped walking. The street noise faded. Because there it was. Not confusion, not fear. A threat. The mask had slipped. I stared at the words, thumb hovering over the screen. For years I would have responded immediately, explained, apologized, tried to soothe. Instead, I took a deep breath and did something I'd never done before. I forwarded her message. To Grant. Then I drove straight to the police station. Filing a report is a humiliating thing when the thief shares your bed. The officer at the desk was polite, professional. He asked questions like he'd asked them 1,000 times. When he asked, "Do you suspect who might be responsible?" my mouth went dry, because saying it out loud made it real. "My wife," I said quietly. The officer didn't flinch. He just nodded, like he'd been expecting that too. I handed over the folder from Sterling and Rowe. He read. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "This is extensive," he said. "I didn't know," I said, and my voice sounded small. "I swear I didn't know." "I believe you," he replied, "but we'll need to ask her questions." I pictured Kendra's face. Questions were not her favorite thing. By the time I left the station, my hands were numb. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. I could still turn back. I could still call her, say it was a misunderstanding, let her talk her way out. That would be the old me. The me who'd been trained to keep peace even if it cost me my dignity. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail. I didn't play it. I didn't need to hear her voice. Instead, I drove home. My house looked the same from the outside. Same porch light, same wreath on the door, same neat little lie of stability. I walked up the steps and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Finally, the door yanked open, and Kendra stood there, eyes blazing. "You," she hissed, and her smile was gone. What the hell is going on? Behind her, the living room was chaos. Drawers open, papers scattered. She'd been hunting for something. She tried to block the doorway with her body. "You don't live here anymore," she said. I kept my voice even. "My name is on the mortgage." Her eyes flicked, just for a second. "A tell." "Not for long," she snapped. I took a step forward. She didn't move. "Your cards aren't working," I said. Kendra's face twisted. "No kidding. Fix it." "I didn't do anything," I said. "I used my mother's card at a gas station. The bank called me." Her expression shifted fast, too fast. "Your mother's card?" she repeated, like she was tasting the words. "Why would you even have that?" "It was in my wallet," I said. "I never used it until last night." Kendra let out a sharp laugh. "So you used some dead woman's card and now everything's broken. Congrats. You're still incompetent." I stared at her. Then I asked softly, "Kendra, why can't I log into our bank account?" Her smile faltered. "Because I changed the password," she said, as if it was obvious. "You were spiraling. You would have done something stupid." "You changed it without telling me," I said. "I didn't have to tell you," she snapped. "It's my job to keep us afloat since you can't." Her voice rose on the last word and I saw it. Not just anger. Panic. "Sterling and Rowe says there are credit cards in my name that I didn't open," I said. Kendra blinked. "What?" "They say there were wires attempted," I continued. "They froze everything." Kendra's face went pale around the edges. "That's insane," she whispered. I watched her carefully, because the truth was standing between us like a live wire. "Kendra," I said, "did you open accounts in my name?" Her eyes hardened. Then she did something I'd seen her do before, but never aimed at me like this. She turned it into my fault. "Oh my God," she scoffed. "So this is what you're doing? You're making up some fantasy to punish me for kicking you out." "I'm not making anything up," I said. "I filed a report." The words landed like a slap. Kendra's face froze. "What?" she whispered. "I filed a police report," I repeated, voice steady. "They're going to ask you questions." For a moment, she looked like she might crumble. Then her expression sharpened into something colder than anything I'd ever seen. "You think they'll believe you?" she said. "Unemployed. Emotional. Living in a motel. You think anyone's going to take you seriously?" I didn't respond, because I realized something. She wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of losing access, and that's when my grief turned into clarity. "Kendra," I said quietly, "move." "What?" "Move," I repeated. "I'm coming in." She laughed, brittle. "You can't just—" I held up my phone and dialed a number. Marisol had given it to me just in case. It rang once, twice. A voice answered. "Sterling and Rowe Security," the man said. Kendra's eyes widened. I didn't look away from her. "This is Daniel Hart," I said. "I'm at my residence. My spouse is refusing entry and I feel unsafe. I need guidance." Kendra's mouth opened, then closed. The security officer spoke calmly. "Mr. Hart, do you have immediate danger?" "I don't know," I said. "But she's threatening me." Kendra lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. "Hang up," she hissed. "Right now." Her nails dug in. My heart slammed, and then behind her, I heard a sound I didn't expect. A voice, soft, uncertain. "Kendra?" Both of us froze. A woman stepped into view from the hallway. She was wearing a cardigan and holding a handbag like she'd been halfway to the door. She looked at me first, then at Kendra, then back at me. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. I didn't realize you were. I didn't realize he was. Kendra's grip tightened. The woman's eyes flicked to Kendra's hand on my wrist, then to my face, and something changed in her. Recognition. Not of me as a person, of the situation. Kendra let go abruptly, forcing a smile. "This is nothing," she said. "Just a misunderstanding." The woman swallowed. "Right." I stared at her, confused. She looked away, then back again, like she was weighing something. Then she took a breath. "I can't do this," she said suddenly. Kendra's smile snapped. "Excuse me?" The woman's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. "My husband," she said, voice shaking, "has been cheating." Kendra's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" The woman looked at me again, and the air in the room shifted. "Your wife," she said, pointing at Kendra, "has been cheating with him." Time slowed. Kendra's face drained of color. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I'd missed a step on stairs. "What?" I managed. The woman swallowed, eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. "I found messages," she said. "Pictures, hotel receipts. He said it was over, but then I tracked him, and..." She exhaled. "And I saw her car at the hotel." Kendra laughed, sharp and fake. "This is insane." The woman shook her head. "It's not. Her name is in the messages. Kendra. He saved her as K." Kendra's eyes flashed. Then she turned on me with sudden fury. "This is your doing," she hissed. I didn't even know her," I said, because it was true. The woman wiped at her cheek, furious with herself for almost breaking. "I'm sorry," she said again to me. "I didn't want to blow up your life. But he told me you were controlling, and she told him you were pathetic, and..." Her voice cracked. "I'm so stupid." Kendra stepped forward, face twisted. "Get out of my house," she snapped. The woman flinched but didn't move. "No," she said quietly. "This is his house too. And you don't get to talk to me like that." Kendra's eyes widened, then narrowed, and suddenly she did something that made my blood run cold. She smiled. Not a friendly smile. A calculating one. "Fine," she said sweetly. "Let's all talk, like adults." The woman hesitated. Kendra turned and walked toward the kitchen, like she was going to get water. Instead, she reached into a drawer, pulled out a file, and tossed it on the coffee table. Papers slid everywhere. I recognized the top page immediately. A quitclaim deed. My name. Her name. A signature line. My signature line. But I hadn't signed it. My chest tightened. The woman stared, confused. Kendra looked at me, eyes gleaming. "I was going to be nice," she said softly. "I was going to let you walk away with your dignity." My voice came out rough. "What is that?" Kendra tilted her head. "It's the paperwork," she said, "that makes this house mine. You were going to sign it last week. Remember, I told you it was a refinance form." I felt like I couldn't breathe. The woman whispered, "Oh my God." Kendra's gaze never left mine. "But you didn't sign," she continued, "so I had to improvise." My hands shook. The bank, the fraud, the devices. It wasn't just about cards. It was about the house. She'd been building a trap. I heard my mother's voice again, soft and steady. "Sometimes good men get cornered by people who aren't." I looked at Kendra and realized the worst part. She wasn't ashamed. She was angry that she'd been caught. The woman beside me took a shaky breath. "My name is Tessa," she said quietly. Kendra scoffed. "I don't care." Tessa's eyes flashed. "I do," she said. "Because if you've been doing this to him, you've probably been doing things to my husband too." Kendra's smile widened. "Oh, honey," she said, voice dripping. "Your husband did plenty on his own." Tessa flinched, then straightened. Then she did something that changed the room completely. She pulled out her phone and pressed record. "Kendra," she said, voice steady now, Say that again. Kendra blinked. What? Say it again, Tessa repeated. Explain how you improvised. Explain the deed. Explain the accounts. Kendra's eyes darted. For the first time, she looked unsure. And I realized something. Kendra was used to controlling conversations in private. She wasn't used to witnesses. She looked at me, trying to find the old Daniel, the one who would de-escalate, the one who would take blame so everyone could go back to pretending. But I wasn't that man anymore. I bent down, picked up the deed papers, and held them carefully, like evidence. I'm calling the police right now, I said. Kendra's face snapped back into fury. You won't, she spat. You're too weak. I looked her in the eye, then I dialed, and this time I didn't hesitate. The police arrived faster than I expected. 2 officers, calm, controlled. They asked questions separately. Kendra tried to charm them, tried to cry, tried to say I was unstable. Tessa played the recording. Kendra's voice filled the room, confident and cruel, talking about improvising signatures like it was a clever hack. The officer's expression changed. Not dramatic. Just done. Kendra's smile collapsed. They didn't arrest her on the spot. Not yet. But they told her plainly that a formal investigation was being opened. They told her not to access any accounts in my name. They told her not to leave the state without notifying the assigned detective. And then they looked at me and asked a question I hadn't prepared for. Do you want her removed from the property tonight? My throat tightened. I looked at Kendra. Her eyes were knives. Tessa stood beside me, arms wrapped around herself. This wasn't a TV scene. There wasn't triumphant music. There was just the quiet ache of a life cracking open. Yes, I said. Kendra's mouth fell open. You can't, she whispered. I can, I said softly. And I am. They gave her time to pack a bag. She stomped upstairs like a teenager. As she passed me, she hissed, You'll regret this. I didn't respond, because for the first time, I believed the opposite. When she left, the house felt too big and too empty. Tessa stood at the door, looking like she didn't know where to go. I'm sorry, she said again, voice small. I didn't mean to show up like this. I shook my head. You didn't do this, I said. You just turned the light on. She swallowed, eyes shining. My husband, she said. He's going to deny everything. He always does. I nodded slowly. Then we don't give him space to rewrite it, I said. Tessa blinked. What do you mean? I thought of the folder from Sterling and Rowe, the fraud logs, the tracing, the chain of evidence. I mean, I said, we document, we protect ourselves, and we stop letting people who hurt us control the story. Tessa stared at me for a long moment. Then she let out a breath that sounded like something breaking free. Okay, she whispered. We sat at my kitchen table with the papers spread out between us like a new language. Tessa pulled up screenshots, hotel charges, messages. I showed her the fraud statements. And as we compared timelines, something terrifying and validating emerged. Kendra hadn't just been cheating with her husband. She'd been using him. The hotel stays lined up with certain charges. The money movements lined up with days my accounts mysteriously changed. Tessa's hands trembled. She used him to get access, she whispered. And he thought he was special. I nodded. And she used me to sign away my life, I said. We stared at each other, 2 strangers connected by the same kind of betrayal. Outside, the sun sank low, painting the windows gold. The house, for the first time in a long time, felt honest. Tessa stood to leave, then paused at the doorway. Daniel, she said, and her voice was steadier now. Can I ask you something? Yeah. She hesitated, then she said it. When I found out, I thought my life was over, she admitted. But watching you today, you didn't beg. You didn't scream. You just moved. I swallowed. I didn't feel brave, I said honestly. Tessa's eyes held mine. Maybe bravery isn't a feeling, she said. Maybe it's a choice. She glanced down at the folder in my hand, the one with my mother's notes. Then she looked back up. Do you want to get coffee tomorrow? She asked, voice gentle. Not like a date, just so neither of us has to do this part alone. My chest tightened in a way that surprised me, because in the ruins of my marriage, something unfamiliar had appeared. Not romance, not instant healing, just the possibility of being seen by someone who didn't want to use me. Yeah, I said quietly. I'd like that. Tessa smiled, small but real. Okay, she said. Tomorrow. After she left, I stood alone in the living room and looked around. Same furniture, same walls, but everything had changed. My phone buzzed. A notification from Sterling and Rowe. Fraud case status updated. Primary suspect flagged. Next steps required. I stared at it. Then I looked down at the black card on the counter. My mother's door. I set it back in my wallet with care, because I finally understood what she'd been trying to give me. Not money, not revenge, a way out. And as I turned off the lights and walked upstairs to sleep in my own bed for the first time in days, I realized something else too. Kendra had kicked me out laughing. She thought she'd locked me out of my life. But the second I used that one card, the bank didn't just freeze her accounts, it froze her illusion. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt since before I met her. Freedom.